You're live. Welcome everybody to Should I Start a Newsletter with three newsletter writers who have no opinion on this topic but came
Absolutely
together
not.
with an objective point of view. We will give
End
you
of stream.
Don't do as
Start
I
a newsletter?
do.
Yes. End.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome. We are here as part of a week-long fundraiser. Designers coming together. We are raising money for families in LA that went through the devastating fires last week and lost their homes and lost everything that they own. And in our case, we're raising money for Celine Dove. Celine actually lost her home and also 4 of her cats. And as you can see in this photo, her beautiful garden in Altadena. I don't know if either of you have ever been to Altadena in LA, but it's in the foothills of the mountain on the east side of the city. It's a gorgeous area, and I can just imagine how cool Celine's house was. And she was a real pillar of her community. Her niece Nyla is raising this money for her. We have a very ambitious goal for this live. We are trying to match Jeff White's $1,000 raise yesterday. So we have a very ambitious goal to raise $1,000 during this live. Can we do it?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Okay. So we're recommending that folks give $25. You can see a QR code on your screen on the right side of your screen. Hit that QR code. Please donate to Celine Dove. We are tracking those donations. We'll be checking in throughout the stream to see if you've donated or not. And we have 3 giveaways for all of our donors during this live. Let's chat about the giveaways. Florian, do you want to tell the folks at home about your giveaway?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are in need of any kind of like service around getting hired as a designer, portfolio review, resume review, or mentoring session, that's what I can give to you. Whatever you need right now, like you basically get a voucher for like one of these things. Whatever is most suitable for you right now, you can pick. And that's what I have to give.
Love it. Thank you. Lynn, tell us about your giveaway.
Awesome. So I actually did this giveaway for my newsletter subscribers in exchange for feedback at the end of last year. And it is a Made Manifest prize pack. Made Manifest is the service design consultancy I founded and run. And we've got some branded swag, notebook stickers, but most fun of all, our limited edition deck of facilitation prompts. So these are like the warm-up questions that we use with our clients and teams on our projects. This has been a labor of love, our first physical product. And I will mail that out to the lucky winner with a handwritten note.
I think that is so cool. If you guys click through, if you're just joining us in the upper left, you can hit the QR code for the giveaways and you can see what Lynn's talking about with that product. It's so cool. I love that you guys
so cool
put this together. Yeah, what a cool offer. And I'm doing a giveaway of my lead gen bundle, which is everything in my Gumroad store, including the product you see on the lower right, which is called the Stay Booked Roadmap, my most popular tool, which is all about how to get clients. So we're going to enter all of you to win. We have a little wheel of names. So if you donate, we'll be checking in and we'll be spinning the wheel and getting in touch with you for the giveaway. So with that, please donate to Celine Dove and let us get on our way. Okay, let's start. Let's just hear a little bit about who you guys are. Lynn, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yeah, so I, as I mentioned, founded and run a service design consultancy based in Toronto, Canada. So that is really the kind of focus of my work and business. We do service design projects across public, private, and nonprofit sector. Right now we're working on some really fun stuff in the government regulatory space, defining service patterns. I think it's fun because I'm real nerdy. We've been doing a bunch of healthcare work in the last year as well around, making the experience of getting a blood test better. So those are just, some examples of the consulting work that we do. But then I also love to write and connect and talk to people about design. And that was kind of where Ask a Service Designer came from as a newsletter. So let me know if you want me to get into that more.
Yeah, no, go continue. Tell us why you started your newsletter.
Yeah, so it was a couple things. One was I really love to write, and I thought it would be super fun to have a kind of agony aunt style advice column where people could submit a question about service design, and it would, give me something to write about and sort of a long form, high quality piece. I will be also honest on this live and say that, part of it as well was I'd been trying to, this was like the pre-pandemic, I've been trying to run some trainings and workshops that were public facing, and started to realize that I'd kind of tapped out my network and reach. Like I didn't have a marketing channel, basically. Like I could post on LinkedIn, I could email around to my kind of close friends, ex-colleagues, whatever. And so I was like, you know what? I want to start building that like direct owned marketing channel. And it started really as just like a bit of a prototype, a bit of an experiment, and it's been going strong since. And it's still probably one of the things that like lights me up the most in my work is getting to write that newsletter. Wow.
I love that. We have a comment from the Peanut Gallery. Hang wants to know how you pronounce the name of your city.
This is true. My toddler calls it Toronto.
So cute. Americans need to know that. Okay. Florian, hit us with a little bit about your background and what you're up to with Open Doors.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Florian. I'm a Germany-based product designer, former product manager. And so I've transitioned into this industry a couple of years ago now, and kind of stumbled into tech, really, honestly. Like first, I have a master's degree in literature, so like it's pretty far away from design or tech in general, I'd say. But yeah, somehow stumbled into this product management role, and then this kind of like developed into a design direction, and so I think I've seen the industry like from a junior's perspective. That is quite similar to what we are still facing right now, although I gotta say it's way worse for juniors now than it was for me. And ever since, I've been mostly working in startups. So I still work as a full-time product designer in a startup called Juro, which is a UK-based legal tech startup for trying to automate contracts for in-house lawyers in companies. But yeah, like you said, I also run Open Doors. And that is, I think, really a labor of love because, like I just said, I really empathize with people, with juniors right now in design because they really don't have it easy. Like there aren't too many roles out there. They have to compete with people who already have experience. Then there is this kind of like gap between university students or university grads and bootcamp grads that have like previous experience from other industries. So it's like, it's a whole mess really. And like I'm someone who loves to build, who loves to just like get into the weeds and do something, and I can't sit still, probably due to my ADHD, but like that's not diagnosed right now. But I just need to do something always. And at some point I felt now's the time to like get into a proper side project. And so I started Open Doors because I knew I wanted to help people. I already did that before, like through LinkedIn messages, really. People would hit me up like, how did you do it? How did you kind of get your first job? So I'd tell people. And then I was like, gotta be a better way to like reach more people. And at first it was a job board, purely just a job board for junior roles, because that was already missing. There was no resources, and we all know how shit it is to search for jobs on LinkedIn or Indeed, especially if you have like very, very certain, criteria for the jobs that you're looking for. And so I made that. But then I thought, why not start a newsletter? And it started super simple by just posting all of the jobs that were posted on the board for the week. So I made sure that people would come back. So basically it was more like a retention mechanism for that platform, really. But then people started asking questions, and I was like, oh, I'm reaching 500 people at this point. Why not actually share my knowledge there? And that's how it started. And now we're here.
I love it. Okay. So, I think that is a really common path for newsletter writers, which is like, I've been getting asked questions, or I'm like expending a lot of energy on social media, and it just feels like this could be a little bit more intentional. And Linn, you pointed that out too, in terms of like owned audience. So how do you guys think about like building your audience on social and the newsletter? Like, how do they play together? Florian, why don't you continue, since you were just starting on that wavelength?
Yeah, so for me, newsletter came first, social came second, really. I've always been a lurker on social media, like all my life, really. Like I've never been a big sharer, really. If you would follow my Instagram, you would see that there's like 3 pictures in my profile, and I post a story like 5 times a year, maybe, or something, on special occasions only. So this didn't come natural. But when the newsletter developed, at some point I realized, okay, now we have to get serious here. I had like, I don't know, maybe 1,000 people already subscribed. And I was like, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And so I looked into ways of, how to boost your growth with a newsletter, how to get the word out there beyond what I was already doing with the platform itself. And well, one of the most obvious ones was social media. And I tried, thinking about what platform could be the best one, really. And eventually I found that probably LinkedIn was the best one, because that was the platform where people were already contacting me before I even started the whole thing, like they were already finding me there. So if I now doubled down on that and would amplify that, like I could grow. And how did I grow? Like after doing this and after like putting out, and I'm still not doing everything I could, I think. There's still potential. Like I'm now at 10K subscribers, and this newsletter is 1.5 years old. Yeah, a little more.
That's amazing. 1.5 years old and 10K subscribers.
Yeah.
Talk about an untapped and unmet need.
Yeah, slightly older, just slightly, but not 2 years now. I think 2 years must be in May or something. So yeah, and I started developing it, but obviously I also had to make sure that the content, would improve. I was already seeing good metrics in the beginning, but I could tell that was mostly due to the jobs that I would include in the newsletter. And then I wanted to make sure that also the written content in there was actually valuable. So I started talking to people on LinkedIn, and also started to try to get a feeling on LinkedIn what topics actually resonated with people. So I would post, I try to post every day of the working week at least in the beginning. So I actually posted a lot more like a year ago than I do now, because now I know what works, and like I can leverage that a little bit more. But I started to get a feeling of like, what are people interested in, which topics actually bombed. And then those topics that I would get a lot of questions on, a lot of comments on, I would then try to like go more in depth in the newsletter. And I would say that worked pretty well, because I was able, like across this journey from like 500 people in the very beginning to this 10K subscriber count now, I was always able to maintain like a quite stable open and CTR rate of like 55 to 60% open rate, and like between like 6 and 8 click through. So always pretty stable. And I think that was like, yeah, due to the quality of the content, really. But yeah, it had to be developed, really. But LinkedIn played a really big role in finding out what would actually resonate, because that is the one thing that the newsletter is not so good in doing. It's like getting immediate feedback. Yes, you can make a poll, you can do a survey, right? But only a very low percentage of people will click that. And very often I find that those are the engaged people anyway, and they're going to give you good feedback. I mean, sometimes they'll also tell you when you do shit, right? But these are still the people that really care. So I wanna generally see like what are people interested in. And I think on social media you can do this slightly better than on a newsletter, and then the newsletter you can double down on stuff.
Yeah. I love that. And I love the point about the immediate feedback loop and the slower development of like maybe your analytical thinking and sort of like your practice in the newsletter. Like this is, you guys have been asking these things, and now I've like thoughtfully put together a reaction to that. Lynn, how do you think about, I think of that as content market fit. How do you think about that for your audience? Like soliciting what's going to really resonate with them?
Gosh, I'm taking notes because Florian, I think I'm like, oh, a lot to learn. Like on some level, the kind of pat answer is like, I just write what I want to write about. But that's not entirely true, right? From the beginning, there was always like a, hey, submit a question. Like the intention was for it to really be a kind of an agony aunt style, like, hey, and I can definitely
She cut out.
Oh no. I was like, was that me?
No. It wasn't.
Lynn, come back to us. Okay, well, this is a perfect time. Thanks, Lynn, for that segue to check in on our donations.
Ooh, yes. I was
wait, Lynn. Okay, you're
I'm
back.
back. Yeah.
Please
sorry.
complete your thought, then we'll check in on donations.
Connectivity issues at the co-working space. You see my lovely corporate art behind me here.
I love it.
Not
I
my
was
house.
your house.
Not my taste. No. I just listened to a really good economics podcast about the economics of hotel art. Anyway, it's funny. Okay, so
Our next live.
yeah, it was really good. It was really interesting. It's economics of everyday things. Okay, so what are the questions I'm being asked? Very similar to Florian, on LinkedIn, by students when I was teaching. What am I seeing out there? Back in the good old days when Twitter was actually like a great, awesome place, there would be Twitter conversations that sparked writing something, or, I would ask a question on Twitter, go back and forth, and then write it up into something. But Ask a Service Designer has been around since 2020, 4 years. And it's nowhere near the growth you've talked about, right? Like, I think we're at something like 1,300 subscribers. I think it's like service design's best secret. A lot of the growth has been just very, organic, people forwarding. I have tried to get better at kind of teasing an upcoming issue to kind of drive some subscriber growth, and then occasionally like cross-posting. So we did a really fun gift guide for service designers at the end of last year with like really fun graphics and visuals, and that got like a lot of LinkedIn attention. So I do try, but I'm not super intentional. I'm not sort of like, I feel like Florian is like next level. I'm definitely taking notes because it's slow and steady, very organic, and sort of just kind of doing its thing there on the side.
Yeah. I will just mention before I go into our donation update, because we've had actually donations pouring in during this live, and we are super grateful for those. And I'm going to shout out everybody who's been donating. That I think there's a big growth secret in your strategy there, Florian, which is like when you're that in touch with your audience as designers, we know this. Like, we say it all the time, but it's like if you're that in touch with your audience, you're like ear to the ground about what they're worried about, and you're writing exactly to that. That's the best growth lever, right? I had a journalist the other day that I talked to, and she's in the same vein. Like, the best growth lever is an article that hits with your audience, that makes them want to share it, that makes them want to take to social media, forward it to friends and things like that. Okay, let's check in on how our fundraising is doing. The reason that we are here, the reason for the season, is to help Celine Dove rebuild after the Altadena fire. We are trying to help Celine raise $1,000 during this live. Let's see how we're doing. Okay. Oh my God, guys, look at this donation lineup. Gerard, thank you. Mandeep, thank you. Anonymous, thank you. By the way, if you submitted and it like accidentally went through as anonymous, or that's like a habit, just forward me your receipt for the giveaways, lex@lexroman.com. Lynn, thank you so much. Pamela, Thomas Pryor, Jakub, thank you so much. Amy, Mandeep, we've got you in here twice. Hang, thank you, Makita, and then and then we're going backwards. I have some friends who've donated before, so we're doing pretty well.
Amazing. That's really good to see.
I think we're at least at $500. I think we might be able to get to $1,000.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
If you're just joining us, we're raising money for Celine Dove, and we have 3 giveaways. You can check them out. There's a QR code in the upper left of your screen. Scan those. Each of us is giving away something. All donors are entered to win. So check that out and submit a donation, a little contribution. We're suggesting $25, but any donation is eligible for that. Okay, let's talk about, so we had a question come in the chat that I thought was really good about how you fit doing this content into your work week. So is it a separate revenue stream or do you think of it as just like brand building, stuff like that? Florian, let's start with you on that question.
Yeah, interesting. So first of all, work week. So mornings are usually reserved for this. Like I take an hour, I drop my son off at kindergarten, I come back, fix up my breakfast, and then it's like usually an hour of doing something for the newsletter. I have like specific days where I have fixed stuff to do. So one day is like writing the article for next week. The other day is writing the other content piece, which is like portfolio review, like a shorter version of portfolio review that I have in there. And then one more day is like kind of like fixing up the issue, like making sure layout is fine and like all the new jobs are in there, all that's kind of like more admin-y stuff. And then the rest of the days in the week, the other 2 remaining days, in the mornings, I try to like kind of see if there's something, for example, about growth that I could like do, some kind of experiment I could facilitate and initiate. Or sometimes I don't even do newsletter stuff on these days. Sometimes I just like build a new app or design something completely different or whatever, like other stuff. Sometimes you have to take a break as well, by the way. Like this is super important. Like this should never feel like a job or like a chore, because if it starts to do that, like starts to feel like that, you should maybe kind of like change something. I don't know, like at least for me, like
go touch grass. Yeah,
go touch grass, exactly, because otherwise you're going to burn out over this, and you don't want to burn out over your side project. Well, maybe it's not a side project for you, but like for me it is. So and so I just take the mornings because that's like a time where I still have like 100% energy. I usually wake up, lie in bed, and like have some weird idea of what I could write about or something. And so I just like tap into that energy immediately and like just go out, do it. And yeah, so that's like that. Sometimes there are weeks where stuff goes wrong, right? Like my son is sick, I have to like keep him at home and maybe watch him for a while, or work was so overwhelming and I have like a lot of leftover work from the last day or something, so I can't work on it. Happens. Then I sometimes put in an hour in the evening or something. But what I always did is I always try to bring down the tasks that I have to do for this to the absolute minimum and like make them so efficient. Because in the beginning I experimented a lot and I did a lot of stuff and like put a lot of time into it to try to find out what works and what's like necessary and essential and what isn't. And then I cut all the stuff that isn't. And now I'm left with something like, I don't know, 2 to 3 hours per week, sometimes 4, depending, to put into this. But that's it. Like that's it. Then there are other things like the LinkedIn stuff, right? That's slightly separate, I would say. However, as you go and as you develop content, you can also recycle content or repurpose content, which makes it efficient again and actually makes it less of a time sink than coming up with something completely new every week. So yeah, that's kind of how I handle that, really.
What time are you waking up to do all this work?
I wake up at 7 a.m. to bring my.
Okay, that's not that early. I thought you were gonna be like 3.
So, I'm absolutely none of these kind of like like hustle guys who like yeah, exactly. No, that's absolutely not me. Like I'm not going out for a run or anything. Well, maybe that could be time I would go out for a run if I wouldn't do the newsletter. Yeah. But I know myself. I wouldn't go out for a run anyway, so I'm just doing the newsletter instead.
That's so impressive. Lynn, you have a fan here. I'm curious how you work Ask a Service Designer into your week. How do you think about that workflow with all of your other stuff that you have going on?
Yeah, so it is not a revenue stream at this point, right? In fact, I was just talking to Lex before we were going live that like it's costing me money to run this thing because of MailChimp and blah, blah, blah. MailChimp. And, that's a whole other conversation around, monetization, whatever. But it really is sort of just like this passion side project. And of course, marketing, reputation building, all those nice kind of side effects. So I think some good context is I've never explicitly actually stated this to my newsletter audience. So, you're the first to hear it on this live stream. Like my kind of like secret goal with Ask a Service Designer is to just one quality long form edition a month. So what I'm typically aiming for is, and this is like not best practice. Like you talk to any email marketer, any person, it's just like way too infrequent. You have to commit to an actual schedule. But I'm like, you know what? It doesn't work for me. This is a thing I'm doing on the side. I don't want to put that pressure on it at this point, especially since it isn't monetized or making revenue. So, in the back of my mind, I'm aiming to send an edition out typically the first Tuesday of every month. Again, I've never made that commitment publicly or to the subscribers because I don't want anyone to hold me to it. And then essentially it's very organic. Like, how do I find the time? I do keep a little backlog in a Trello board and in notes of like ideas for what I might want to write about. Sometimes it's like, oh shit, like the deadline is coming up, my self-imposed kind of secret deadline. You know, can I pick something that I feel like I could just get into a flow, like that I feel inspired about? Sometimes I'll even outline it in my notes app on my phone. Like, okay, I think it's these 3 main bullet points. You know, sometimes I'll start an edition, like start answering a question, and then it's just not flowing. And I'm like, you know what, I actually want to write about this. One of my most popular editions last year was, you know, life happens, like Florian was saying. I hadn't had time to put into it. And I had this wild week where I thought I had thrown my keys into a Toronto, like a city bin. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to write about that. Like, I'm just going to write a little story about the service design lessons of trying to recover my keys from a city garbage can. And this was like very quickly written, kind of off the cuff. And it was very popular.
Yeah, that lifestyle content will really land. It's funny because I started my first newsletter probably in 2018, similar to you, Florian, just as a way to like reach people. Like I just had all these people I wanted to communicate with about at that time, like design courses and events I was doing and speaking. And I was like, it's just easier if I email everyone. But I think over time, I used to use it in a very utilitarian way where I was like, I'm doing this event. I wrote this blog post. You know, you should know this. Here, like very like emotionless. But Tarzan K, who's an email marketer, had took a class with last year, or maybe in 2023, taught me the value of story in your email. And so now if you read my emails, I almost always open with a story or an anecdote. And that has been huge for my growth and for like landing stuff with readers. Like I used to get a lot less replies. I get way more replies now when I write stories like that. Yeah.
I wanted to pick up on that, actually, going back to something Florian said before around it's actually not that much of a two-way communication channel. And I think that surprised me. Sometimes, like when people reply, I'm just like, thank you so much for replying, because it genuinely feels like sending something out into the void, like into a black hole. And part of my goal is to, you know, connect with people and like have dialogue and discussion and like share ideas and like, so I think that's maybe a bit of a watch out or something that was a surprise to me. I think because I thought about email as this two-way, one-to-one communication. But of course, the mental model people have for a newsletter is it's this kind of like more mass or more anonymous sort of. And I'm like, this is my real email. Like, please just email me back. So I think that's like a good thing to kind of keep in mind too. And I think it's Paul Jarvis talks about like the only metric he cares about is reply, like how many people are replying, right?
Yes, because it's like, I think, and this is why I think a lot of us get caught in the trap of social media, because social media, it feeds the like dopamine stuff, right? Like it's like, oh yeah, people are like liking my post. And with newsletters, you're not going to get as much of that as we've just established. However, it is very clear when you land the plane correctly, because you will get so many replies and you'll be like, wow, this really hit with my folks. And then on the converse of that, I wrote an email last week about 12 cold emails that worked for me. And I thought it was a killer email. I was like, I'm literally screenshotting a note that I sent to someone that landed me a deal, an interview, a job. And I got 0 replies, guys. Nothing. I was like, this didn't land.
It's so interesting because it's hard to predict. But the other thing I would say to that, Lex, is something that happens to me quite frequently is, you know, like whatever, going about my life. And then I'm at an event and someone comes up and they're like, oh, I read your newsletter. I love it. I loved XYZ. Or I did that giveaway to get feedback at the end of last year and you know, solicit questions like, what do you want me to write about next year or whatever. And there was like one edition I'd been meaning to write forever on qual and quant data and how we marry those. And like, I put a lot of examples from work and like, nothing, tumbleweeds. And then in the feedback form, someone said, that was my favorite of the year. It was really helpful. So you also just never, you know, I just want to say like, you also never fully know. And sometimes you meet someone out in the wild who's like, oh, I love that. Or, you know, I read that or
absolutely.
Okay. So on that note, I want to talk about the return of your email. Like, in what ways do you feel like this activity is returning to you, right? Like whether it's money or like kind feedback or speaking opportunities or what? Florian, let's go to you on that first.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, the reply thing, absolutely. Like whenever someone replies to any email, be it the welcome email or a normal newsletter issue, like I put this thing in the welcome email, right, where I say, please reply, like for this reason of not landing in spam. But I actually told people to, tell me a little bit about their story if they care to share that with me, And all of a sudden, when I started doing that, I would get like 10, 15 replies a week from subscribers who all described their story. And, I was so flustered by that because I didn't think people would do that. And so I would always make sure to get back to them. Sometimes it would take me a couple of days to reply, but I always make sure to get back to these people because they don't know me yet, I think. Maybe they know me from LinkedIn, but they haven't read my newsletter yet, and they still cared enough to share that with me. So I'm getting back, and that's so good. So that's definitely a big kind of return. And then also sometimes people connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a message and say, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the newsletter. And it's always like heartwarming, obviously, to hear that and to read that. So that's great. In terms of like the more business return side, so in the beginning, that wasn't really my intention. But at some point I recognized, as the subscribers grew, I recognized, there might be a couple opportunities in there to do things and tried sponsorships. When I did it like myself and went out to companies, maybe my approach was just completely wrong, but like there was crickets, nothing really. In the beginning, there wasn't anything, but I just kept going. Like I didn't let that stop me at all. But then the inbound started to happen because I don't know, the right people saw it, the right brands saw it, I don't know. And it started to come together and it's been going nice ever since. So I regularly have sponsors, not as many as I would like, but there are definitely regular sponsors, and I'm starting to work with brands, a bit more in depth and actually form partnerships instead of just like one-off collaborations. And that feels good and right to me. And it also feels organic. Like I didn't force this. Like I tried to force it in the beginning a little bit, but that didn't work. And then it came organically eventually. And that feels good. It definitely pays for like the costs of running that newsletter. I also feel like it also pays for the amount of work I put in already. And then there are all these kind of more passive ways also of making money. Like I'm on Beehive now. And they have these boosts where you can recommend other newsletters and get some money off of that. That also works pretty fine for me, I would say. And it doesn't cost my subscribers a penny. So that's great. And then lastly, now as a kind of third stream, I'm trying to establish a paid version of my newsletter now, where you get like no one gets less now. Like everyone still gets the same newsletter every week, everyone who's a free subscriber. But as a paid person, you'll get a little bit more, and you'll also get like 30% off of my services and such things, which I know can be hard to afford. So I'm trying to give people like a cheaper way of actually affording them this way, because it's a very easy calculation. If you just like pay for like 1 or 2 months of the newsletter, you already like, you get the discount out basically. So it's a pretty easy calculation. But that's very fresh. I just literally launched that like last week. So very fresh. And yeah, I'm going to report back on how that's going in a couple of weeks.
Please do. Please do, because I think the job, I see that a lot actually from job focused or career focused newsletters. There's a free version and a more robust version for paying subscribers. I think that's legit because you're helping people land a job, and that's a big ROI for them. And that model works pretty well. Like for Caitlin Arford, who runs Freelance Opportunities. And also, I don't know if you're familiar with the Study Hall newsletter. Yeah. Similarly, they actually got acquired, or Study Hall acquired Sonia Weiser's newsletter, which was the jobs newsletter as well. And just wanted to give a shout out to Tom. What's up, Tom? Tom is getting inspired to restart his newsletter, which is awesome. We obviously are big supporters of newsletters and think everyone should be writing one. I want to take a pause and check in on how our fundraising is going. So, oh my gosh, we had a last minute donation just break over. Thank you guys so much. Okay, let's have a look. So we've got Sanel. Thank you so much. Colleen, Priska, Gerard. We are at over $600 raised on this live. So
we can do
Are you
1K.
serious? Come on. I want to win this thing.
We have, you guys, we have to beat Jeff White. Jeff White raised, Jeff and Hang raised $1,000 yesterday for Tiffany's fundraiser. We are trying to raise $1,000 for Celine Dove, who lost her home and her beloved cats in the Altadena wildfires last week. You can see the cats in this photo in this beautiful garden. So scan the QR code on your screen and share a donation with Celine. We'll be looking out for your names. And then also we have giveaways. So in the top left of your screen, you see a QR code that says giveaways. Each of us is offering something. So check that doc out and see what we're offering and get entered to win. And I have my email here. You can forward me your donation receipt. So we make sure that you get your giveaway. We're going to enter everybody in. I had like a wheel up earlier, but when Linn froze, it freaked me out. So I closed it. But I'm going to put all your names in a wheel, like a Wheel of Fortune wheel. And we're going to pick our winners that way. Okay. We have some questions. Colleen, we sort of answered this question a little bit, but I will pick up on something that you have in here about repurposing content and sort of like the workflow of content, right? So like, how do you think about that? How do you think about the content workflow between like social media, newsletter, and also repurposing stuff like that? Linn, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so a few kind of rules of thumb that I operate by just sort of because I want to. Like, I really see the newsletter as a space of like, this is kind of a creative space and an outlet. And it's like, I'm just going to do mostly what feels good. So I'm not, not suggesting this is like best practice or, but I really like to keep the kind of core long form newsletter content. Like the value exchange that you get as a subscriber is that you're seeing that like first. Like you're seeing that first, you're seeing that kind of exclusively. It's the only way to get that content is be subscribed to the newsletter or the only way to sort of get it first and soonest. And then what I had started experimenting with in the last like sort of year or two was, after a certain time period passed, reposting long form content to, let's say, LinkedIn or Medium. And that's honestly been like pretty sort of ad hoc. Like it's kind of like, it's been quite experimental. I will say the exception was experimenting with that gift guide post I talked about. Like it was just so great and we put so much work into it that I couldn't keep it newsletter only. And that was like by far my highest performing LinkedIn post. So I did like a teaser image carousel on LinkedIn. I think that hit like 10K views, which for me is like by far huge. Like I am not nailing the social game by any means. And yeah, so that's kind of my approach. It's like core newsletter content periodically after some time has passed. I will repurpose long form onto other channels just to have stuff to post. And then I'll do, like I said, little teasers of upcoming issues to try to get subscribers. But it's pretty simple. Again, I don't know that it's particularly like sophisticated or best practice but it's kind of like, yeah, that's what works for me, Yeah.
Do you use a content calendar or like a scheduler for any of this? No.
No. It's so like kind of gut feel. And, I think when I've tried to plan things out, ultimately, like I said, then I end up just being like, I'm over that idea. I don't want to write about that.
Dude, every time I schedule stuff out and I'm like, I don't want to write about this anymore.
I know. It's like better to roll with when the inspiration kind of strikes. What I will say though, that I notice is like, if you can do stuff that's kind of like timely or on topic or on, like the gift guide, right? Like everyone and their, their dogs is doing a gift guide, right? But I think and I even had like, so funny. I felt so trolled. There's another newsletter I subscribe to, their HR consultancy, and they emailed me. They were like, "This is not a gift guide." I was like, "I feel called out because I posted a gift guide."
Okay, but you know that you're doing something right when you start to get haters.
Yeah.
Like I really think that's a good. It's like replies then haters is like the echelon that you need to be moving.
Yeah, totally. But that posted really well. It was very popular. And so doing something timely was fun. And I think it was kind of unique. that is kind of unique enough was cool.
It's so funny. The feedback, like sometimes the feedback is so funny, and the level of demand people have for free content is unreal. Florian, tell us a little bit about like your content workflow, and do you use a content calendar, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I once just anecdotally to what you said about the haters. I once had someone call me an asshole in the unsubscribed message not because of the content actually, but because the platform I used to use before I switched to Beehive had like a slight dark pattern there where the unsubscribe button would be the secondary button and the stay subscribed would be the primary one. I literally couldn't control that, and I didn't know up until that point because I never tried unsubscribing from my own newsletter before.
Right.
Weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway. Okay, so yeah, in terms of recycling content, so the first thing that I do is I do like a kind of teaser post on LinkedIn from my weekly issue, like one day before it hits every week. So on Tuesday, that's for me because the newsletter ships on Wednesday. And for that, I always take the article and I try to like pull out one aspect that has value and like try to lead with that in that post. So in a sense, that is like repurposing. But obviously, I make sure that the newsletter still is worth opening because, there could be a freebie in there that helps you, or there could be, just more aspects in there that are just valuable to learn about as well. And so that's one way of like kind of cross repurposing the content. But also sometimes when I see that a newsletter was particularly going well, I try to dissect it further and like make several LinkedIn posts like from it, basically. That doesn't always work. It depends on the topic and like on the structure of the newsletter. But that's also something that I do for like kind of, other days where I'm not promoting the newsletter necessarily. And then when it comes to the newsletter content itself, what I always do is, obviously I try to do fresh ideas as much as I can. Like I feel like the same way, like I don't want to like chew the same thing like 3 times or something. It gets boring, and like I said, like it should never feel like a chore or something. So I try to avoid repurposing there as much as I can. But there are just sometimes weeks where I don't know, maybe I just came back from holiday and I didn't spend a single thought of work during that holiday, and so I don't have a fresh idea. So I go back and I try to go back like 6 months or more and try to see which issue performed really well 6 months ago. And then I look at the topic and think, is that something I could maybe, kind of warm up? But I won't just copy that article, obviously. I will like think about, okay, has something maybe changed about this? Has my opinion changed? Or is there maybe a slightly different angle we can approach this topic from now to make it, interesting even to those people who maybe have read it 6 months ago? And then I do that. So even if I repurpose or recycle, I don't just tell ChatGPT to rephrase that article. I will make sure there's something new for you in there. Or sometimes what I also like to do is, when I have an article where I think this could also be, better if I gave you a resource, like a template or something to work with, but I didn't have the time to do that template because that happens, and I couldn't include it in the first round. I just rewrite the article a little bit and now instead spend the time on doing that template for you and then give that with that issue. So play it by ear a little bit, I'd say. But those are definitely some strategies that I apply and that I also found working, because then those issues usually also perform quite well.
Yeah.
Not always, but yeah.
I'll jump in on that to say something I did last year was to kind of give myself a bit of a break over the summer, taking like a content hiatus. And because I had seen quite a lot of subscriber growth, I just went back deep into the archive and picked some editions that I thought were, great, or that were either popular or that people would kind of get value from that might not have seen, and did a very similar kind of like, in that case, I mostly just was like, here's an oldie but goodie, and then added some, additional context. Or there was one I wrote, was actually one of the ones inspired by I tweeted this tweet about a Miro post-it versus a mural post-it, and how Miro had a drop shadow, and it was like this whole thing about skeuomorphism, and like it was like my most popular tweet ever. So I wrote a whole newsletter about it, but this was a few years ago, and I reposted that because I actually was really proud of that piece. There's a Gary Larson Far Side cartoon in there too. But the hilarious thing was that since that edition, when they did the refresh, Mural has added a drop shadow to their post-its. So I guess
talk about impact, Linn.
Yeah. So you can do fun little stuff like that. Like definitely like and I think that's something I'm going to do going forward as well, is like do a little bit of like a content hiatus over the summer and bring back some like oldies but goodies, or like a fresh take. So yeah,
that's a really smart approach. I also really like the approach that you just shared about like calling out or like breaking down a brand in your post, which sort of can make your work a little bit more topical or timely, like especially if there's like a big product launch, or like when Figma and Envision were battling it out, RIP. You can sort of like play off of that and be like more topical, which makes you more shareable, I think, as well, in terms of like growth or even
just like personal curiosities. Like a Starbucks opened like a mobile order only location in my neighborhood, and I was like so fascinated by this, and like talking to my partner on walks about like the model and this whole thing. And so I'm not saying it was necessarily like topical in that kind of news trending sense, but like I just did this, like it was an excuse to do a deep dive into like Starbucks service model, Reddit boards, comments, do a little bit of investigation. And that was another piece that like I got a lot of feedback around. I forwarded I actually had I just closed a consulting project with a client, and they said, hey, did you know like a team member on my team who didn't even know we were hiring you forwarded me this piece you just wrote about Starbucks. So this is so funny how it can kind of come around like that, but can be a great way to just like dive into your curiosities. Like, and a brand or something known can be very relatable, right?
Yes. I think there's such an interesting point there too about how you're communicating your thinking and the way you practice your work in your newsletter, and how that gets shared. And I think sometimes that can be an immeasurable return, but it does return to you quite a bit. I want to get into that in a second. I want to go back to our fundraiser because
we're coming up on the end. How are we doing?
We are coming up. We're like 10 minutes away. So we have raised, I think, over $730 during this live. Yeah. Caitlin, thank you for your donation. So we're like, what, $270 from our $1,000 goal. Help us beat Jeff and Hang. Let me put Hang.
We need to win. We need to win.
We need to take home the reigning champion. Thank you so much. Whoever scanned the QR code, thank you for that. Please scan the QR code on your screen. Help us get Celine Dove some recovery funding. I already spoke about this at the top of the hour, but I have lots of friends on the ground in Altadena. I have friends who lost their home in this crisis, and it is a long road. I lived in LA for many years. This is the most destructive fire that we've experienced in my lifetime there. I am seeing videos from my friends on the ground there. It is horrific. And state agencies, major nonprofits, it's going to take so long for that funding to come through. Folks need places to stay. They need belongings, right? They lost everything: toiletries, clothing. Celine has one remaining cat supplies, work gear, cars, things like that. So please consider donating. We're trying to hit $1,000. We recommend a $25 donation, whatever your heart calls to you to give. We're also doing some cool giveaways. So check out the doc that's in the upper left, and everyone who donates is eligible for a giveaway. So please consider chipping in. All right. So on that note, Linn, about clients forwarding emails, I have found that too. I make a lot of money from my newsletter. It's like the center of my world. But I'm curious, like, do either of you have a good story about like jobs, anything related to jobs? Like I got a job interview or job interest or recruiter in my inbox because of a newsletter, or clients being closed or attracted because of the newsletter?
Yeah. So no jobs like in terms of full-time roles or anything, because like literally before I started, when I started the newsletter, I also started the job I'm still at now. So it's Although I have to say that when recruiters approach me, sometimes they would mention Open Doors as a whole, like as a platform, which obviously includes the newsletter. So that definitely happened. So maybe there would have been, more opportunities in there that I just didn't pursue. But what I've certainly found is that when sometimes clients or like brands approach me for sponsorships on LinkedIn, or also I do work with one brand to produce, blog articles, and those often mention the newsletter as well. They don't necessarily want to advertise there or something, but they do recognize me doing content there, and they do see it, I think, as proof that I can do that, and that I am active, especially because my LinkedIn, I'd say, is pretty fresh still. Like I've only started getting serious about LinkedIn content last year, in the second half even, I would say, like in terms of actually growing there and like considering sponsorships and such things. And so for the short timeline that we're talking about here, in my case, I think it just definitely had a big impact for sure. Like it did add visibility, or it did kind of add credibility to kind of what I'm doing and to my personal brand, I think. So in that regard, for sure.
How did your blog partnership? You write guest blogs for a brand? Is that what you?
Yeah, kind of. So it's like we're distributing it across a lot of channels, one being their blog, but I also post these articles on my own Medium. And now we're also discussing if there can be crossover with my newsletter, maybe. But the topics are not necessarily always overlapping, so I have to be a bit careful about that. But that's exactly what I'm doing. So it's a company that's like trying to go a little bit to try to fill that gap between development and design. So like a tool that basically makes you have one source of truth between design and engineering in terms of components. And so not really my area of expertise, but they saw that I can like write about this stuff in general. And I'm also like a fairly technical designer, I would say, which is something that doesn't really come across in my newsletter at all, because it's not a subject there. Because the newsletter is also rarely about me. I do share my experiences from like my junior times, but that doesn't have too much to do with what I'm doing in my day-to-day now. So therefore, that's not always visible. But they saw that I can write, and they saw that I can like approach various topics that are relevant to designers and kind of like package them in an engaging way. And I think that's what led them to me, really.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that. Linn, what about you in terms of clients? Do you stay in touch with clients through the newsletter? Have you noticed any clients started as a newsletter reader and then became a client?
Yeah, so I think one of the things here that I do kind of think about, and then as I said, because this is a lot of a sort of playful creative outlet space for me, don't worry about too much. My kind of core consulting business B2B clients probably aren't necessarily the same as my practitioner, design community newsletter audience. There is some overlap. There are clients who join the newsletter as a way to keep up to date, which is super sweet and awesome. I can't say that I've ever had like a straight up, lead or consulting project come through the newsletter. But what I will say, kind of similar to what I shared, is a surprising amount of times I hear, I forwarded this to our design team. I saw, shout out Nada in the chat, like we put it up at our service design guild. Or the story I shared where, we'd just gotten hired and a client said, oh, so funny, it came full circle, and someone had forwarded the newsletter. So I do think there is like that reputation building halo effect of being a kind of, I really don't like this term, but like thought leader. I think it's so like 1984 bizarre, but I think there is this kind of like, oh, like I'm reading your stuff, I'm sharing it, and then more directly on the kind of like straight up, monetization side, for sure, it's I get people who join a paid workshop or buy Pebble Talk, or I wouldn't say that. Actually, interestingly, I find LinkedIn performs better for me in terms of conversion rate on paid stuff, which is really kind of bizarre because I would have thought I have like quite an engaged, warm audience through the newsletter. But there's definitely people who are like reading the newsletter, coming to workshops or webinars, kind of like feel like they're part of the community in a sense through the newsletter. And I mean, I just like love that because I want to, like be connected with people, have dialogue, have people who are, reading and replying. And that's like, I think that's been like really huge and really valuable, even if it's not directly like consulting projects.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the community thing is really interesting, and it's almost like a way to network too, right? Like, and keep in touch with folks.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, here's what I'm up to. And like I said, I do have that crossover of like in person, someone will come up to me and be like, I've never met you, but like, I love your newsletter. And that's like that's so nice. And I'm like, oh, we already have like a bit of a connection now,
Right. It's absolutely, I always love that. Okay, Pamela, I want to answer your question really quickly because I actually didn't talk that much about my monetization strategy. I run 3 newsletters and they are bundled into subscriptions. So right now my monetization strategy is paid subscriptions. I have 115 paid subscribers across both of them. And I'm aiming for 500 paid subscribers this year, which is $54,000 ARR if I hit it, because I charge $9 a month for my subscriptions. And then my newsletters have driven speaking opportunities. So speaking is a big monetization path for me. And then sponsorships. So I have 2 partnerships. I have a similar approach to Florian where I'm like trying to work with folks more long-term. So sponsorships crossed 5 figures for me already this year, which is awesome. So those are my 3 monetization, but we've already talked about clients actually is a huge one. If you work with clients, you can absolutely use newsletters with clients. You can also use it with your community to do classes and workshops and things like that. But my newsletters are actually about newsletter monetization. So if you're interested in that, check out my website.
Lex's stuff is awesome and has gotten me thinking how to be a bit more intentional about some of this stuff. So
yeah, can only repeat that because like especially this paid subscriber stuff that I'm just trying, this all came from Lex. Like I probably wouldn't have done this without her. And although I still have to adjust a lot of stuff, like I'm already very thankful for a lot of the feedback that you gave. And you're definitely the one person to go to in this space.
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, let's check in on our fundraiser real quick. And then I have a closing parting thoughts question for you. Okay, so Florian, thank you for your donation. We've got Caitlin still in there. So I think we've raised so far 700 and I like subtracted it over here. 755.
Yes.
We are $245 away from $1,000. If you haven't donated and you're on with us, please do scan the QR code and check out the giveaways. We're going to enter everyone to win one of these amazing prizes. And you can send me your receipt at lexalexroman.com. As our last and final question, thank you guys so much for being here. What's your take on whether or not someone should start a newsletter? Like, who should be starting newsletters? Thinking about designers that be tuning in, or designpreneurs, design creators. Who should be? How do you know if starting a newsletter is right for you? Lynn, I'll start with you.
I mean, I just kind of would say, like, if you feel called to do it, why not try it? Like, that was how it started for me. It was kind of a whim. I was like, you know what? Wouldn't it be fun to write like a service design advice column? That sounds fun. I love to write. I love service design. I have a lot of opinions. And so I would just say, like, yeah, try it. Go for it, right? You can probably hear in some of my answers that, it hasn't necessarily been this super structured, intentional or kind of like strategic thing. It's been very much the prototype and iterate. And as long as it's kind of fun and people are getting value out of it, keep going. So like, I would just say, like, yeah, try it. If you feel curious about it, why not just try it?
I love it. Florian, what about you? How does someone?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely second that. But obviously you have to feel like some kind of a calling, like I actually want to write. If you dread writing for whatever reason, then maybe it's not the best thing to try. But I often hear people who ask me, should I do this? And like, I don't have anything to talk about. And I'm like, are you sure, mate? Are you really sure you don't have anything to talk about? Like, do people come to you with questions every now and then? That's like I told earlier, that's how it started for me. People came with questions, all the same questions, all over again, all the time. So you can just like bundle that and like centralize it in a newsletter and get those questions answered. And these people are not coming, they're not coming by chance. They are coming for a reason to you, because there's something about you, your experience, the area you're in, like working in, or whatever it might be. They're coming to you because they see that and they think that you might have answers. And you can just channel that into a newsletter. So that's one way. And the other is, if you just have to reflect on things, like Linn said earlier, sometimes you just want to share observations or something. And if you don't take it super seriously and want to monetize from day one, you can just go and put your thoughts into that newsletter and see where it goes. Some of the best newsletters that I follow, I also wanted to pick that up earlier but forgot about it, Linn. You said you're quite infrequent with your newsletter, and not always, for a marketer would say, how dare you do that? But those are some of the best newsletters that I'm subscribed to, that are not necessarily coming like clockwork, but when they come, they ship so much value. They are value filled, because these people that write them, including yourself, they took the time and they actually waited for something valuable enough to hit their desk or their thoughts that they can pack in there. And so I think, it obviously depends a little bit on what you're trying to reach, what your goals and everything. So if your team that wants to monetize this, or would at least like to monetize this, your intentions and path might be different from when you just want to share your thoughts. But if it's anything like that for you, just go do it. It's so easy these days, and you should just get started really easily. And if you have a network, you also have your first subscribers, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll sneak in to say that some of the feedback that I get that makes me the happiest is people say I save your newsletter to read it when, I really have time to dive into it, or just that sense of I look forward to it and I savor it. And that to me is just that, or it made me laugh.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that. That's the best. Yeah, I think the network of support, your supporters, can be great early subscribers, and just starting as a way to communicate with them, as we've talked about a little bit, is a great way to start the newsletter. It can be sort of a soft start. You doesn't need to have a brand, doesn't need to have a landing page. It can just be hey, I want to write about some stuff. Here's what I'm planning to write about. If you're interested, get on this list. And I used to use it a lot to get jobs. So I think whether you're a job seeker or an entrepreneur or a creator who wants to monetize off of your content, it can be a great starting place for you and a great channel to have in your wheelhouse. Thank you so much for joining. Where do you recommend folks follow you? I'm guessing LinkedIn and your newsletter, but feel free to chime in, Florian. Where should folks follow you?
Yeah. LinkedIn and the newsletter. All my other social profiles are either quite empty, or I have 30 followers, like Blue Sky or something. But if I will maybe try to pick one of those up this year, maybe in the second half. So if you feel you wanna drive Blue Sky, follow me there. Maybe it motivates me to do more there. But no, I think LinkedIn and the Open Doors newsletter are the best ways to kind of stay in touch and hear my thoughts, and also to reach out, obviously.
Yeah, love it. Linn, what about for you?
Yeah, subscribe to the newsletter. I'm wow, I got to hit that 10K. I'm inspired for it. Or reach out on LinkedIn if I'm pretty easy to find. Linn, Vizard, wizard, but with a V. So
with a V. Love it. I'm Lex. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I'm at lexroman.com. You can find all my many ventures there, including all my newsletters. Thank y'all so much for being here. Please donate to the LA Fire Funds. And we appreciate your time.